Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Really Good Life with Pablo and Gabby. We are excited that you are watching this and that you're here. Maybe I don't know if it's your first time. You stumbled across the thumbnail and now you're watching this video, or if you are a regular viewer,
Subscriber.
yeah, whoever you are, we welcome you. And
Yeah.
we believe that there is a really good life for you. There's a really good life for your marriage. We think that wherever your marriage is at, whether your marriage is in a really bad place right now, where you're like, dude, I don't know if I'm about to get a divorce, or if you're just having the most amazing time of your life, we believe that God has a great, great divine plan and purpose for our lives that's full of hope and that's full of beautiful, beautiful moments.
In the Bible, we don't find like, do this, don't do that sometimes. Sometimes there are, general things that God will, stories, examples, or, um, some stuff is very like direct,
Yeah, like
but
don't do this, don't do
like
that.
don't steal, don't
Yeah.
murder. But what we're going to talk about today, I mean, it's not in the Bible per
Well, it's not like
se.
in the year 2024, when this happens, you should do
Or in
this.
your marriage, this is
Yeah.
how it should be,
Yeah.
and what we want to talk about today is more about, because we've been married 13 years, and in these 13 years we have been very intentional
Mhm.
about boundaries with the
Mhm.
opposite sex, and that's
Mhm.
what we want to talk about, because
Mhm.
I know that we also have I've had people ask me like, what are your guys' boundaries when it comes, do you guys have friends from the opposite sex? You don't, or like, what, how does it look like? And I think that it's a good topic, because I know that um there are things that I know we've had to be very intentional about, to set boundaries and say, you know what,
Mhm.
I don't think this is wise.
Yeah.
Again, it's not in the Bible that it says, wives don't have, friends with the, like, there's none of that, but there is wisdom, and James says, ask for wisdom.
Mhm.
And everyone's marriage is so different.
Mhm.
And we're just going to talk about like what's worked for us.
Mhm.
And, obviously you can, get some of these for yourself, or you don't, it doesn't, it's really up to you. But, um,
This has been one of the, look, I trust you completely,
mhm,
right? There's not this, you don't give me a reason to think otherwise,
yeah,
to be like, oh, this girl's, I should check her, try to sneak into her phone and look at her DMs.
mhm,
Neither do you feel the
mhm,
desire or need
mhm,
to do that
yeah,
to my phone, and to go through my DMs. Like, and even if you would, I mean, like, you can see all my DMs,
yeah, like,
whatever. Like,
you
we're
care.
an open book.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that part of the reason why we wake up with this much peace
Mhm,
when it comes to us trusting each other,
mhm.
um, is because we have set
And we've
boundaries
done the
from the
work.
beginning.
Yeah.
From the beginning, we've had these difficult conversations where,
Mhm.
some of which, we'll
We
get
don't
into.
talk, yeah.
Um, but it's been, these are the boundaries that keep our marriage healthy and keep our marriage
Yeah.
safe
Yeah.
and keep our marriage, quite frankly, affair proof.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, I know, well, since the beginning when we got married, we both had friends that were the opposite sex, and I remember from the beginning, we were like, we talked about it when we were dating, and we said, hey, like, when we're married, like, these really close friendships that you've been used to, like, where you would probably open up your heart to, things like that. And to me, they were like brothers.
Mm.
And to you, they were like sisters. There was like no,
Yeah.
we didn't have history
Yeah.
either. You didn't have history with them.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like pure, it
Yeah.
wasn't, friends with benefits or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's gonna be another conversation.
Sure.
But like, we had said, you know what, we think it's wise
Huh.
to obviously still keep them as friends. It's not
Yeah.
like we just cut them off
Yeah.
of our lives. They're
Yeah.
still in our lives.
Yeah. Of course.
But how the friendship,
What do these new boundaries look like?
exactly, like, how is it gonna look like now?
Well, it's a really good place. It that even alone even just what you just said right now is a
Yeah.
good thing to unpack because there's so much there,
Yeah.
right? With what you're saying, it takes me back to our first year of marriage.
Hmm.
And our first year of marriage, we're even though we did know each other for a long time,
Yeah. It was completely different.
yeah, but I'm saying like you and I knew each other for many years
Hmm.
and we were best friends for many years and we shared a lot of similar friends for
Hmm.
many years.
Hmm.
But nonetheless, we still had to have this conversation. Now, I can't imagine someone that has only known the person that they married for like a year
Right.
or like two
Yeah.
years, or maybe
Yeah.
in some cases less.
And I remember
And
when,
they come with a whole bunch of friends already.
right,
Like, like I've already
that
known this.
didn't really
He's like my
know.
brother, or she's
Yeah.
like my sister or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And so I can only imagine how much, you know, different and maybe even difficult to a certain extent
Yeah.
that conversation is at that
Yeah.
point.
And I do remember hearing from different people and like our different mentors say like, look, first year of your guys' marriage, it's about you both. Forget about your friends, forget about your family. Like,
Hmm.
you know, because one thing that I was used to is taking trips with my family all the time. And I remember coming even to a point where we set boundaries with that. Like, I don't always have to bring my family along on all our trips. Like,
Hmm.
this is about getting to know each
Each other.
other as husband and wife, because that's a whole different
Hmm.
game, like
Hmm.
from dating. Like, it's
Hmm.
completely different. So I remember even making that distinction that
Yeah.
year. Like, you guys are not always going to be over your moms and dads. Like, you're not always going to be over with, your friends. And so that first year, we took trips, we went up north, we went to New York. Like, there was a lot of just you and me. So, but we've had to have these conversations before.
Mhm.
And it wasn't ever, like how we've done stuff is that we never, because we're very intentional about wisdom,
Mhm.
we're always like, how is this going to look like? Let's talk about it before it even happens.
Mhm.
So even when we were engaged, I remember that, when we were in premarital
Counseling.
counseling and they talked about like, yeah, this is not about you and your family here. This is about just you too. Like I remember sitting down and talking about that and be like, that's true. I remember we only took one Big Bear trip
Mhm.
with my family that year.
Mhm.
That's about it, during Christmas, but, um, we were just very intentional about focusing on us, and I
Mhm.
think what happens is that when you're young and you're having a blast, you just wanna bring everybody in,
Yeah.
you wanna bring your friends,
Yeah.
you wanna bring your
Yeah.
family,
Yeah.
and it's not bad,
Yeah.
but you take away the focus
Yeah.
of that year, and I
Yeah.
think you have to have those
Yeah.
conversations.
Well, and one of those specific conversations. Okay, I'll say the story on how it happened,
Happened.
and then I'll break it down like with the logic behind it, and also I'll share a framework that helps us understand
Yeah.
it. And quite honestly, you might be like, dude, you guys are like that's really radical, or that's like you guys are extreme. Well, okay, well, two reasons why I think we're very extreme. Number one, I think it's because of the small community that we're a part of. We're just all really extreme because we're like radically like
We love
we
Jesus.
love the Lord, and
Yeah.
we're like, you know what,
We're people of strong conviction.
we have very strong
Yeah.
convictions, exactly. And so if something, okay, let me explain it like this. The Bible says that if you want to be close to God, you have to be holy, okay? Because
No one sees him without holiness.
yeah, that's a specific verse, but I'm trying to like make it as simple so everybody can understand. So holy means set apart, okay? And so for us, we've come to the realization, and it's a fact for us, that without God, life is nothing.
Yeah.
I don't have any enjoyment outside of God.
Mm-hmm.
This is my strongest belief that I carry, that has shaped my worldview, that um, dictates how I will manage my relationships.
Hmm.
Okay, so anything outside of God, I don't want. And so the reason why we're so radical is because we're like, dude, if something is pleasurable or is going to be fun or whatever, but it's going to take me out of that,
Yeah.
set apart, that holiness,
Hmm.
I don't want to risk it. And I don't even want to go there. So there are some things that, we are like, just for, just
Yeah.
just in case,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
not going to participate.
And we don't, and we have faith for it,
Yeah, we have faith and conviction, but then also, um, we're Hispanic, and I think as Hispanics, like, if like a Hispanic mom or like Hispanic parents, they always think the worst case
I
scenarios.
know.
Like they conjure up the worst possible situation that can happen,
Yeah.
and they talk about it and say, well, if you go outside after you took a shower
With your
and
wet
your hair's
hair.
wet you're gonna get sick, or like, but there's
But I think we've learned throughout the years the redeemed version of
yeah, we're
that.
learning
We're
learning the
learning
redeem
because
version.
I think that because I have to check myself too.
Yeah, yeah,
That if things are going to be out of fear, like if
yeah.
we set boundaries out of
It's
fear,
good. It's good.
then
It's
that's
good.
not valid. God
Yeah,
doesn't even
yeah.
please
You
in
won't have the
that.
grace for it.
And you won't have the grace, and the Bible says that you could only please God, with faith.
Yeah,
Like that's the only way.
yeah.
So,
You'll have the grace for it, and it'll become like a burden.
and it's becomes routine religious, and when there's no conviction
Mhm.
and you don't believe in what you're doing, like that's why you see so many people falling from grace,
Yeah,
because they don't
yeah,
believe in what they're saying and what
yeah.
they're preaching,
And
and they
so,
don't live it.
but that's what it is. It becomes so difficult. It's like you can hear us say something like, "Oh man, that boundary's crazy," and I'm only gonna do it because someone told me to do
Mhm,
this. But
mhm.
then if you genuinely like,
Just don't.
it's not a conviction. You have revelation of why you
Mhm,
do it.
mhm.
Then what'll happen is that you'll put yourself in a prison,
Yeah,
and then it'll
and you
be
hate
like,
it.
and then you hate it, and then it's only a matter of
And then
time
you're offended at the people,
that told you.
and or that are living it, and you
Yeah.
become haters of those
Yeah,
people.
or yeah, and what'll happen is that you'll hate it so much that it'll be like a little prison, but this is what'll happen. You'll do it, but like hidden.
Hit it.
So like,
Yep.
oh, whenever that person's not around, I
Yeah.
just I
And then
won't
you
do
live
that.
in appearance.
Yeah, that's
So,
a horrible way to live. Going back to my
yeah.
story. Okay, the first year of marriage, you had a particular friend who was a very, very close friend to you growing up.
Mhm.
Okay. And I remember the conversation that I had with you was I said, Gabby, um, I know that you and this person have been friends for a long time. And that you guys, you see him as a brother. I know that you guys, you know, love each other as friends, and that's awesome. And you're used to talking to him a lot. You're used to texting him individually. You're used to just having conversations, and I don't know what time you call him or like whatever,
Well,
but
it wasn't like that
um,
either.
well, but that was the conversation,
Yeah.
you know. But then it was like, but I want you to understand that now that we're married, I won't take too kindly to that, and I wouldn't
Well, that
want
was
you.
before we got married
Oh
that
yeah,
we had
before we
that
got married, I had a
conversation.
conversation. So
Yeah.
we're about to get married, and I wouldn't want, you
Mhm.
know, I, I would feel very
Mhm.
like awkward,
Yeah.
if that were to continue. But then the same thing with me. If I had friends that I would, uh,
Well, with you, I
do
think it
certain
was
intimate
different.
things.
I think with you, it was different. For me, because of the type of person I was very like quality, and I was able to have friends without getting involved, romantically. Um, but I also think with you, it was a lot of you were very flirtatious. And
Yeah.
back then you didn't even know you were being flirtatious. So we had to have like really hard conversations, and we weren't gonna brush it under the rug.
Mm-mm.
We were very like, hey, like
I just saw you
this,
do this, and this is
yeah,
like,
and this is like not gonna fly.
yeah.
Like you're too friendly.
Mhm.
Like you're way too friendly,
Mhm.
like there was certain conversations or certain compliments, compliments on girls, how they would dress, or
Mhm.
wow, you look beautiful today, like things like that, that I said, hey, you're gonna have to tone that down.
Yeah. Or just stop
Obviously,
that altogether.
no, but no, because I've heard you
Yeah.
like compliment people, but it's different now. It's very
Well,
respectfully.
I think I'm also different. So, okay, the reason, okay, so because we're talking about a few different things now.
Yeah.
So, let's
Well, what
get
we're talking about right now is
boundaries.
exactly. So we had what I'm trying to say is that we both had to be real with how we were feeling and how what we saw.
Yep.
Because a lot of times what I think what happens is that women won't say anything because, well, I don't want to be the jealous type. So I'm just gonna let him be, because then he's gonna say I'm being jealous or over controlling. Or same with you. Like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna voice it out
Yeah.
because she's gonna be like, dude,
Yeah.
I don't want her to think I'm being jealous.
Yeah. Like, for example, if in our first year of marriage, like that behavior would have continued. Like for example, if let's say you had a friend and he was a close friend, and our first year of marriage, you're here, having, like brunch with him, at a restaurant, or you go out to dinner. Um, that to me is like, and I think it's like, each individual, but
But
to
for
me
us, yeah.
to me I don't think that that's,
Yeah.
I think that that's like, okay, your time, if you're gonna get married to me, your time of like private,
Yeah.
brunches with
Yeah.
opposite sex
And I
people, I think
yeah,
are done.
and I think
If you
people
want to go on a brunch date, you're coming with me. That's what
yeah,
I'm saying.
and I also think that like people and we'll talk about that too in a little bit, but people I'll just say this. I think I've gotten to know people that get into trouble because they get stuck in a past season. Like, you get married, you're not single anymore. Like, you gotta accept the fact you're married. Or, you just want to hang out, like all you want to do is hang out with little kids and single little kids and you're married and you're,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it's
and that's different too, because
but I think that a lot of people brush it off because I've heard these comments of like, what's the big deal?
well,
You
and
know?
I think okay, because right now I heard myself say what I said about, if you're gonna go on a brunch date, it's gonna be with me, like, and I don't want you to go on a brunch date like
Hmm.
with other people. Now let's think about different scenarios. What if it's like at work and
Right.
just randomly,
Right. You go have
like you
lunch.
go have lunch
Yeah.
with someone of the opposite sex, and it just happened. It wasn't something like, oh, we're gonna plan a date and
Well,
we're
I
gonna
mean,
go
it's
like
happened with
romantically.
you. It's
Right.
happened like where you in your industry,
Yeah.
what you have, like
Yeah.
you've had to have, I think,
Like business meetings or
yeah,
whatever it
like
is.
business meetings
Yeah.
or lunches. I remember you had one a couple years ago with
Yeah.
someone. Um, but because I feel we've set so many different boundaries that like, I know who your friends
But
are.
then
I
also
know
yeah, I think that takes a high level of integrity as well.
a
Because look,
100%.
because
Yeah, because if you're a
yeah,
businessman or a business
yeah,
or your job
sure,
requires that
sure,
you have to go out,
yeah,
meet with the CEO, meet with
yeah,
different people.
sure,
I mean, that's immature too. And that's kind of what
yeah,
I want to talk about a little bit later. But
yeah.
right now we're talking about like, the intention
So
behind
you're saying like
boundaries.
going out as friends, and
Yeah,
if
I
the
think that's
purpose of going
different.
out, like,
Yeah.
okay, if the purpose of going out
It's to
to
connect in
to
a personal level.
okay, that's okay. So let's
Yeah.
explain that. So what we're saying is that we believe it's unwise to plan a brunch date
Yeah.
or any type of like date
Hang out.
or hang out
Yeah.
for the purposes of connecting on a personal
Personal
level
level. Yeah.
with someone that's of the opposite sex,
100%.
not
Yeah.
your wife, not your husband.
Yeah, I
That's what we're
think
saying.
exactly.
I like it.
I think that's very, very, very risky. I
Why?
mean,
Why?
well, because think
Because
about it. We're
I'm thinking,
humans,
yeah.
right? Like we're human beings and it's over and over. It's proven. Like you see this everywhere. Whoever you spend time with a lot and you connect heart to heart, you're going to find them attractive. Like you're going to grow an attraction. I mean, if it's your sibling, it's different, right? Because I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's weird. But if they're not your blood sibling,
Mm-hmm.
like there's just you're gonna find some type of attraction, and they're gonna be, and not only that, but like if you have time to go out with the friend that you're gonna connect in a personal level, why not make that time to go out with your spouse? Like save that time to connect with your spouse. Like we believe a huge strong conviction is your marriage is your foundation for everything. So if you're not spending time with your spouse and making time to be out with them on a brunch, lunch, date, night, whatever it is, then like what are you doing with other people? Like it just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to bring up this conversation or this thing that I heard, I forgot where, but on Instagram I think it was Dr. Faith, and I liked what she said, but like you're saying, some of these things take high levels of integrity and of maturity, and I like what she said. She said, "Look, if you had a covenant friend
Before marriage.
before
Explain
marriage,
what covenant friend is, because some people
covenant
might not know
friend
what that
means
means.
that like they are your
It's like a
like
lifer.
yeah, like they're your man, they're like a Jonathan and David." that they
Explain that.
protect you, they are there for you. They have your back,
Yeah.
that if you're in danger, they're like right there, like, bro, like I'm with you, they pray with you, they dream with you. Um,
And this is opposite sex and,
yeah,
same
yeah.
sex.
So you can have those before getting married, you can have those covenant friendships, right?
Yeah.
And then you get married. Like, what happens to those friends?
Yeah.
And one thing she was saying was like, look, like, I think it's so immature for people to just cut them off
Yeah.
completely and be like, look, I got married, so peace out. She said, why don't you, bring them along where your husband and that friend connect so well, they become covenant friends. And then, one thing she said is, I never text him alone.
Yeah.
I always bring him my husband into the text.
And that's exactly what it is. So look, I think because you're talking about someone who presumably, now you say presumably for everybody, who presumably has a high level of integrity.
Right.
Okay. And no offense, like this, I'm not saying this in like a,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying
Yeah.
who from you
Yeah.
see, the Lord give you testimony that they have a high level of integrity.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is who's saying that.
Yeah.
Do you get
Oh
me?
my God. Yeah.
That's who's saying
She's
that.
amazing. Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's,
But she also says that, she also says like, but you got to be like whole and you
that's
got
what
to
I'm
be
saying.
mature. Like,
That's what I'm
not
saying.
anybody has a covenant friend either.
That's what I'm saying, because
Yeah.
it's like, look, if you're bringing a
It's not a
friend
hangout buddy.
from the past
Yeah.
and like
It's not a buddy that you go hang out and have a
yeah,
couple beers, and it's not that type of friend.
but that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
if I would say, look, if your friends in the past before you got married were just kind of like, drinking buddies, or you guys
Mhm.
or
Or hangout
or hangout
buddies.
buddies, like or look, if you ever hooked up with that person, like
That's a whole like,
well,
we gotta
yeah, but we
dedicate
can't
something.
brush with the same. We
Yeah.
can't brush everything with the same brushstroke. Because I think right now you're talking about like, these people that have been
Yeah.
in ministry.
Well, I mean, we've
But
had,
right
like,
now
for
I'm
instance, you
saying,
and I, like, for instance, your brothers,
yeah,
they're my covenant friends. They're
yeah,
my covenant
yeah,
brothers,
yeah,
and obviously they're your brothers, but we've built such a amazing friendship,
yeah,
with Josh, like before he got married,
yeah,
like, we were so like close,
yeah,
and same thing, now with David, like we're super close, but there's a level of respect and
yeah,
there's a level of honor,
yeah.
and there's no weirdness
But I'm
there
saying this,
because we've
love.
set
A
boundaries.
1000% I
Yeah.
agree with you. I'm saying this. I'm saying if you were friends with someone and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, but they were like my best friend. They're my best friend.
Hmm.
If you ever hooked up with that person, if you ever,
Yeah.
got, physically like
Yeah.
intimate
Well,
with whichever level,
that's
well, let me
like,
explain that, because I
yeah.
think that would be stupid. You know what I mean? Like
That to me is an automatically
that is a
like,
clear boundary, but you got to
yeah.
understand, like, don't just speak to like,
Assume, yeah.
don't just assume. Like, so what I'm saying is like, dude, if you've hooked up with someone, or if your spouse is hooked up with someone and they're like, this person's still my best friend, and they're texting, like, red flag, red flag, red, like, this is stupid if you don't think
And
that's a red flag.
I've heard too, like, oh well, God redeems 100%, like you forgive, you were redeemed, but to have a closeness.
That just burns my, like, that boils my blood, because like, to me, like, that's just like stupid,
It
like
is
covering up for
stupid.
stupid. Like,
It
that's
is, yeah.
no, what are you talking, like, I know God redeems, of course he redeems,
Right.
like, this is the business, like,
Right.
redemption, of course, like, this is everything. But at the same time, you have to understand, if certain boundaries were crossed,
Yeah.
dude, those are part of your consequences.
Yeah.
You can't, like, once you cross a certain level,
Yeah.
like, okay, the Bible says that when you have sex with someone, you become one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you became one with this individual.
Mhm.
Just because later on in life you're like, oh, well, now we're going to
Everything's
church,
cool.
and now now we're like, at church,
Yeah.
and like, like living a holy life and doing all this stuff. That doesn't mean like all of that never happened.
Mhm.
You see? So this is what happens. You're like, oh, well, what, God redeems, like, and, everybody's kumbaya, and everybody's like, let's all be like, cool with each other. Let's all,
Buddies.
let's go camping together. Let's go like on vacations. Let's go do all this stuff.
Mhm.
And you're
Come
rolling your
over
eyes
my house at midnight.
come over my house. Oh, it's just my friend. We're friends. The Lord redeemed us. I'm like, dude, this is just stupid, because any moment
Mhm.
of weakness,
Mhm. Mhm.
you're going to take off
You're
right
just
where you ended up.
you're pretty much making yourself liable. Like, putting yourself in the target, again. And because everybody knows that in marriages, you go through seasons.
You go
In
to slumps. Yeah, you
marriages,
go through
you will
slumps.
go through some crazy seasons where you're like, dude, I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
Like every marriage goes through that,
yeah,
and couple times,
yeah.
not just one time, a couple of times. So if you are like having these open invitations to these
Mhm.
people from your past, to have them so close to you in your intimate circle,
Mm.
it is the most dumbest thing you can ever do, because you already had an attraction. You already had a connection, especially if you're talking about sex. That's spiritual.
Yeah.
That's spiritual, emotional, and physically you became one. So it took, I'm hoping that it took you time to like restore that inside of you, because you cannot tell me that you had sex with them and that was it. Like, no, there was some emotional stuff there that you had to go through and give it to the Lord. And you had to be like, God, here's my broken heart. Here's my broken everything. Like, you got to repair it. And if you didn't do that, even worse, I would say stay away from that person overall, So it is very silly, and it is very unwise to have someone that you had a past with in your inner circle, or having them over and acting like nothing happened.
Because it's like, oh, but they were my best friend, and they, we like
Yeah.
we got so close and all this.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, the moment you cross the boundary, you lost that.
Yeah.
And this is just part of the consequences.
Yeah.
So no matter how much you cry, no matter how much you say that person, this is just what you decided to do, and this is part of the consequence.
Exactly.
What I'm thinking is we're talking about boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking about a house, and I'm thinking about walls around a house.
Yeah.
Okay, why do people? When do you actually need those walls?
And it rains.
Well, not just the rain, but like,
What do you mean?
okay, if you have boundaries,
Yeah.
are they to look cute?
No.
What are the boundaries for?
For things to not come inside.
Okay, but when would things come? This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know
Boundaries are for difficult moments.
got it.
Boundaries are for the bad times.
Yeah.
You don't care about your
Like when it
boundaries in the good
rains
times.
and all that.
You
Yeah.
don't honestly, you don't care about your boundaries in the good times. Like when everything's peachy, like when we love each other.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we're having so much sex. Like, oh my gosh, we're going out. Oh my gosh, we're going on this vacation. We're doing that. We're doing all this. Bro, like your boundaries at that point, it's like, oh, why do we even have these walls? Why do we even have these boundaries? We're so in love with each
So
other.
sunny.
It's everything's like so peachy.
Mhm.
But when you're like, thank God I have those boundaries,
Mhm.
is the difficult moments,
It's in the storm.
is in the storms, in these trials,
Yeah.
is inevitably it's going to rain. Inevitably,
Yeah.
your marriage is going to go through difficult times.
Yeah.
Well, it's in those times that you're going to wish you had these boundaries.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have these boundaries, it's just you're easy targets, like what you were saying. You're easy targets, you're easy open doors.
Yeah.
I'll give you a clear example. Let's say that you're like, man, this is dumb. Like, I can't believe I'm listening to this podcast. Like, wow, these people are just so like, they're too extreme. They're too old school. They're too extreme. All right, let me tell you a little story. Okay, let's say that you're having a beautiful, amazing marriage because you guys are just in a really good time with your spouse. All right, but then something happens. Oh no. Meanwhile, this good time, you guys, but then here's this friend who's just there and like, you confide in and you maintain this like close relationship. Okay. But now guess what? Something happened in your marriage. The first person that you tell is that friend.
It's that really close friend.
And then that really close friend, because they want to be a close friend, they're like, oh my gosh, that's so unfair what that person's doing to you, what your husband, what your wife is doing to you. Man, that's so bad. I would never do that to you. Like, here comes the little hero, Now you see why boundaries are needed? Do you see what I mean? Like,
your only hero should be Jesus.
as whatever as it sounds, guys, like, honestly, this is why boundaries exist.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you know what? There will come a time where you and I are going to be upset at each other, and we're going to have to come back to each other.
And I think this has to do with bursting the fantasy bubble. And I think a lot of people are in a fantasy bubble, and they don't like people like us that like are realist. And wisdom, one thing I've always said is, look, wisdom is not attractive. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not popular.
Yeah, it's not.
And it's not attractive. Wisdom is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom is so uncomfortable. Wisdom could be so annoying sometimes, because you're like, man, like everything in me wants to enjoy this and do
Yeah.
this because I think everything's going to be so amazing. But what does the Bible say? Your heart is deceiving above anything and everything. It deceives you yourself, like, and that's scary to even think about. But what wisdom does is like, hey, that's a fantasy. That's Hollywood. That's, a TV show telling you that. And who is Hollywood? That's the world. So if you go based on like, well, I saw that in a TV show, or my friends do this, and you don't go, what is the word saying? What is God telling me? What is wisdom? And I think that's where a lot of people get themselves in trouble. Like, what's reality? What can, seriously, what can happen if you really would stop and just pay attention, pause, and look at your decisions, look at your patterns, and be like, whoa, like, I haven't been wise. That's why I get myself into this and that and this issue. And then you never, like, how did I end up here? How did this whole thing, this whole mess, end up
Transpire.
happening? Like, so
And
it's,
what you'll do is you'll go back because that's the question you'll ask. Like, how did it get this far?
yeah,
How did this
how did I
transpire?
allow
And
this?
if you go back in time, you will end up at the place that we're telling you about right now.
Yeah,
Go back enough. Any affair that you've been a part that like,
it's
I
happened.
mean if an affair is sadly happening in your marriage or you've heard of an affair or you go back. Go back to what transpired. Like
Yeah.
in retrospect, what were the things that led up to that? And I
Where are the
guarantee you
boundaries?
that in the very, very beginning or towards the
Yeah.
beginning, because there's still like a whole
Yeah.
pre-conversation, but towards the beginning, there were no boundaries.
Yeah.
There
You
wasn't a
were too
conversation.
you were too free,
Yeah.
but not the true free,
Yeah.
because a lot of people think that restrictions
Yeah. Are
are enslave
limiting.
you or
Yeah.
limit
Enslaving. Yeah.
you, and you're not really free,
Uh-huh.
and like, no, if I say that to my husband, he's gonna feel like he's restricted.
Like I'm controlling
Yeah,
him.
like I'm controlling him. No. If you don't have those things, then you won't have true freedom.
Yeah.
You're not gonna
Yeah.
have what we're talking about,
Yeah.
being in peace. Like when you would, work at real estate,
Yeah.
I mean, you still do, but when you were more hands-on and you would go to these events and,
Mhm.
you went to Washington,
Mhm.
alone with Freddie one time.
Mhm.
And I know how the real estate industry can be, especially at parties.
Mhm.
I know how that can go.
Mhm.
So, but I was at peace because we had so many boundaries
Mhm.
and we had talked about real stuff. Like we would talk about, okay, that one time that I saw you, flirting. What was that about? Like, what are you thinking? Like, not like, what are you thinking? Not like that.
Mhm.
Like, more of like,
Why were
seriously,
you doing that?
let's
Yeah, like
talk about it.
did you
Like,
realize how you smiled at this
yeah.
person?
And,
Did you realize that you were checking out this person?
yeah. And then we had to talk about it. And then that's when we get real. And that's
Yeah.
when we're like, bro, like, I have a lust issue.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
Well, we're going to have to talk that in prayer.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to cut stuff. And
Well,
we're going to have to come into disagreement,
yeah.
even with some movies.
Yeah.
We didn't, because of it, we were like, dude, we don't want TV to rule our lives. We didn't get cable.
Mhm.
Like, we,
We
not
cut it
because
off.
we couldn't afford it,
Yeah.
just because we didn't want it.
Well, that brings up another thing. Like, if you are someone that has struggled a lot with lust, like if you're one of like your biggest struggles, like as a man, I would say, well, even as a
As
woman,
a woman, yeah.
even as a woman,
Now it's
but I would say like if one of your struggles was lust and
pornography,
pornography or what is it called, uh, having sex with multiple partners, what is that, or you lived a very
promiscuous.
promiscuous, yeah, you lived a very promiscuous life, and you got out of that, like you got to understand that that doesn't just go away. Like if you lived a very promiscuous life or if you um struggled
Struggles with lust
with lust a
or
lot,
pornography.
just because you repented one time doesn't mean that those desires or cravings
Won't
or
go.
temptations
Yeah.
better word, go away like that.
Mm-mm.
You still like you're on a
It's a
process of
process. It's a
overcoming.
journey.
So it's a journey of continually
Yeah.
saying, I'm going to set this boundary here. I'm going to set this
Yeah.
boundary. I'm going to set this boundary there.
Yeah.
So when you're married, if you aren't extra intentional as someone that has battled that in the past, well, this is why, babe, I would think in my life, like, dude, it's only a matter of time before I cheat on Gabby because I knew how difficult that had been for me
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
So,
Overcoming that.
yeah, overcoming that exactly. And so that's what I'm saying. If I'm not real and if I'm not
Right.
honest with myself
Yeah.
and if I'm not honest with you,
Yeah.
then what'll happen is I don't like
Mhm.
set those boundaries because I think I'm over this or I
Yeah.
got this
Yeah.
or "Oh, that's
Or
not a
what are you
big deal."
talking about? You're exaggerating.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and I think that's what's helped us
Mhm,
to just be transparent,
mhm.
be real, our struggles, what did we grow up with? What did we go through as a child? What were the battles? And I think that is something that I also have seen when couples before getting married and they talk about each other's battles. It's very important, because you have to lay it out there. Don't act like you're perfect. Like, no, this is a baggage I carry. This is what I come with, and we were very intentional about just laying it all on the table and being like, look, these are our struggles. This is what I've gone through. This is, and I think and obviously, I'm going to talk to the ladies here. You got to be very mature. Like, I have allowed the Holy Spirit to heal me in different areas of my life where when we would have these conversations, it wasn't the jealous wife having these conversations with him. It was truly like me being intentional on how can I help you? How can we support each other?
Mhm,
And I would pray for him. I still do.
mhm.
But in that season, I remember having certain dreams and like God revealing certain things to me and how to pray for you in that area specifically.
Like,
So
there was one time that I remember, your we went out to eat with your parents, and,
that's when we were dating, not when we were married.
yeah, and your dad noticed that I was checking out another girl,
Mm-hmm.
that was in the restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
um, and your dad even what did your dad tell you?
Yeah, my dad said, "Are you sure you want to marry him?" Because, he has a wandering eye. So and that got him nervous, like, dude, if this guy's doing that now. So
Yeah.
I
So
remember
what was the
like,
conversation we had after that?
yeah, and I remember afterwards I had to come to you again, and it wasn't as a because maybe because I understood about the spiritual realm at a very young age that I knew what that you would like not to take it personal. Like I knew that you weren't like shading me. I knew it wasn't like because you didn't find me attractive or you didn't love me.
Mhm.
Um, but
It was just a battle that I
it
was
was
going
just a
through.
battle, and I
Yeah.
and I remember having a conversation with you about that, like,
Mm.
hey, even my dad noticed it, like,
Yeah. Like,
and
this is
he
a
told my
problem.
mom,
Yeah.
and this is gonna be a problem going forth, and obviously we were having our issues too that we had to like face and
Yeah.
confront,
Yeah.
with immorality and things like that, but we had to just be so real and like burst the,
Yeah.
oh no, he loves me,
Yeah.
like he would never do anything to me.
Mhm.
I remember not even saying that to my mom, not responding like he would never do anything to me. I remember not answering like that. I remember I was like, okay, like
Yeah, we gotta look into
we
this.
gotta like
Yeah.
really look into it. And I remember in our engagement um season, it was hardcore, like, God cranked up the fire on both of us, and I remember just saying, "Okay, this is so hard." The discipleship and the mentoring that we were getting, because man, that was like God got a hammer and just started, like, on me, like, just hammering me. Um, but I'm so thankful because I remember that's when my eyes were open and your eyes were open, and we had conversations of like, you're gonna end up like your family member. Do you want to end up like that? Do you want to end up like your parents? Do you want to end up? And I remember we had to be sober and be like,
Mhm.
cut all the romantic,
Mhm.
oh, we're gonna live happily ever after. God was like, you're not gonna live a happily
If you
ever
don't deal with
after.
this, if you don't
Exactly.
start setting boundaries,
Hmm.
if you don't start dealing with this, then what's gonna happen is that easily,
Yeah.
you're gonna be unfaithful to your wife.
And we've had, because we've been part of premarital counseling also with assisting, our pastors. And I do see couples go through it and it's hard for them. But then when they get married, they just fall back into whatever they said they weren't going to do. And then you just see like they could have avoided that. They could have avoided this because, they didn't follow through on their boundaries, that they that, God was telling them to set up. So
Mhm.
I think, the first thing with boundaries is you have to be real and why you're putting those boundaries. Don't just put boundaries just because you heard it
Mhm.
online or a preacher said it, or,
Mhm.
no, like,
What do you think about jealous people setting boundaries?
well,
Well,
I
how do you
mean,
know you're jealous? Like,
we've heard also stories where, um, I know, like, there's like I remember this instance, this person thought that the husband, I guess her husband was laughing at some other girl's joke, and she took it like he was having a good time with her and they were having a side conversation that she didn't know anything about or something like that, and she prohibited, for him not to talk to that woman again. And I thought
mm,
that's so ridiculous, so I don't think your insecurities and your fears should be the ones setting the boundaries.
that's really good.
I don't
That's a
think
really
so.
good. That's a really good
I
point.
think that's immature.
Yeah, that's really
You
good.
need you
Well,
need inner
how do you know
healing.
that's happening? How do you know that's happening? What are some
Well,
signs to say, do I want to have this conversation because I'm actually a really jealous person, or do I want to have this
I
conversation
think
because I want to?
if you're a very jealous person, you need to go get help first before setting
How do you
boundaries.
know you're a really jealous person?
Well, how do you not know? When you get jealous, you like want everything inside of you boils and you want to hurt that person. You want to, you get angry, you get upset, you start to think the worst of your husband, like you start accusing, you start saying no, you start twisting things, like no, he is doing this. And all you're bringing is chaos into your marriage, more problems, he's distanced from you,
Yeah,
all of, yeah, like that's chaotic. The Bible says that where there's jealousy and there's envy, there's disorder.
mm,
So
sorry to be.
there's going to be disorder.
Mhm.
So but when it's truly that you guys are just having a calm conversation and just being like, hey babe, like, I was getting this from the Lord that we need to set boundaries, not because anything happened, just because we need to set boundaries so nothing happens,
Yeah,
or if things have happened in the past where if it's the wife, where you could be humble and be like, hey, I think certain things happened because we didn't set boundaries, not you didn't set boundaries, no, because it takes two,
hmm,
and
that's very true.
say, it's been hard. I think we've been hitting a lot of walls because we don't have boundaries, and I think it's time to set boundaries. What do you think we can, what are
How can we
those
start? Where
boundaries?
can we
How
start?
can we start? But
That's
you
good.
take a humble, not like an accusation, because a jealous person, that's the first thing they do. They accuse. They accuse you. They, make you feel guilty, like you did something. Obviously, if you are doing something, then, then
Yeah,
you can't
you're kind of
water
provoking
it down.
it.
Be like, no, you're just being a jealous person. I mean, if you did something, own up to it,
Yeah,
and confront it.
yeah.
But we're talking to the audience that like is saying, you know what, I do want to set boundaries. How to do it? Well, your attitude has a lot to do with it,
It's true.
And if you are a jealous person, I would say seek help, because that's just an indication
Yeah,
that
there's something deeper
there's
going on.
something deeper inside
Yeah,
of
like
you.
why are you
Why,
jealous?
yeah, like why do
Why
you
do you have
doubt
this? Yeah,
him?
yeah,
Do you not believe him that he loves you? Do you not
yeah.
believe that he's,
And maybe it's not even about him.
it's about you,
It's about you, and it's about your past, and it's about,
insecurities,
yeah,
you
beliefs that
know,
you have adopted
or
that
maybe
are
you grew up in a
lies.
home where your dad did cheat on your mom
Yeah,
a lot of
it's
times,
true.
and you come from that background.
Yeah.
So that's why I say there's, before setting boundaries, like with you and I, we had to go through a lot of inner healing.
Hmm.
We had to go through a lot of like
Hmm.
talking, a
Well,
lot of things.
and the thing is this, the boundaries isn't a one-time event. Like
No,
it
we
isn't like, oh,
continually
we
set
had this
boundaries.
conversation 13 years ago and we're in that understanding. I think it's constantly like revisiting
Constantly.
that. Like
And
just yesterday, we had a
we had an
conversation on
uncomfortable
like, yeah, we
conversation.
had a conversation on like, you know what,
You gotta
we got to revisit
reinforce.
that. We got to reinforce, we got to
Yep.
do that. Because then what happens with boundaries is that the longer they're there, and the more you see a wall and you're like, what's the point of that wall again? I don't know. Whatever. Let's move it a little bit this way. Oh,
Mhm.
maybe I didn't need it. You
Mhm.
see what I mean? So
Mhm.
then that's when things happen. Then it's like, no, oh shoot, that's why I need walls. So I think it's good to constantly revisit and constantly have a conversation and
You
be like, all
have
right,
to.
well, this is why we have
And
this like that.
constantly you gotta be praying for your marriage, because in that you feel nudges, the Holy Spirit will show you something like, hey, this or that, like you need to revisit it, or maybe you need to set a new boundary. I mean, that's happened to us all the time, even with our kids,
Yeah.
and I guess, what are some of the
Well, I was
boundaries?
gonna say, how do you feel about yeah, what are some of the boundaries? Now, okay, what are some of the boundaries that we have on social media?
Clearly, I mean, for me, I know it's I I'm very short when other men contact me on DMs, like my personal.
Yeah.
I try not to engage too much on that. Um, like a couple weeks ago, someone, an old client of ours reached out, and they want to know how I was doing and like, what I've been up to. And I was very short. I
Yeah.
was just very like, I'm fine, thank you,
To the point,
to the
but
point,
courteous
of
still.
course. And then then afterwards they were asking about you. And I was like, oh, he's fine, that's it, but it wasn't, I didn't ask questions to him,
I see.
like, because and it depends, obviously, if it's like a high school friend or someone that you've
That's exactly what
known.
I was gonna ask you. Okay, what
Yeah.
what what do you do like if a high school friend reaches out and he's like, "Hey, I wanted to catch up with you. Like, how you
Hmm.
doing?
Yeah.
I haven't seen you in a long time."
And I've had that too, where you have high school friends or people that you knew for a while or you worked with. And again, I've kept it short, but I'm also kind, like, oh wow, like it's so nice to hear from you. I hope all is good. Um,
So you're not a jerk and you're like, "Don't talk to me because you're a
no, 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 of
man."
course not. No, of course not. You're mature about it.
Yeah.
You're just very like, hi, like if they say hi, oh my gosh, or oh wow, it's so nice to see you. Like it's amazing. I see you have a
Yeah.
family. Like that's so
Yeah.
awesome, whatever, whatever,
Yeah.
right? Um, or maybe the men that follow you on Instagram, like I
Yeah.
have people that will reply to my stories
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's so cool, blah blah
Yeah.
blah," Um, laughing emoji,
Mhm.
but where it comes to, I think where the problem comes is where you begin to have intimate
Where
conversations,
you open your heart.
where you start to open your
Well,
heart.
well, I think okay, so
And that takes a lot. Obviously,
yeah.
some people like I think we're smarter than that, where you won't do it like off the bat. Like, someone talks to you and you're like, get to pour your heart. Like, obviously, it doesn't
Yeah.
happen like
It
that.
kind of like
Yeah,
leads there.
exactly. And then you start to have deeper, like more
Yeah.
conversations and more conversations.
Yeah.
I think that's where you have to just be wise.
Yeah.
Where is this conversation going?
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
what's the
it's
purpose? So,
easy. Yeah.
what helps me really understand, because I know I was going to share this framework in the beginning. I think this is what helps me understand things. Okay, so any relationship that you have, you can narrow it down to four different stages
Hmm.
or four different things that like buckets in which
Categories.
categories in which you have different people that are in your life.
Hmm.
Okay. I didn't come up with this framework myself. This is actually from a book called what is it called? I know it's Miles
Something
Monroe.
about dating.
Yeah, it's called Dating and
Waiting.
Waiting. It's
Yes.
called
Dating
Waiting
and
and Dating by
waiting.
Miles
Yeah.
Monroe. It's actually a really good book because it details the framework we're about to talk about, but it also talks about a bunch of other stuff. So, level one is acquaintance. This is the lowest level of friendship. Um, this is where you should, he says, you should remember everyone's name. This is something that I'm horrible at, but try to get better. Level two, casual friendship. And what determines this is there are common interests with one another. So activities, concerns that you have, like, both of you want to save, the beaches. So,
Yeah.
you go clean up the beaches. These are casual friends. Okay. You have things in common, shared interests.
That's where you about the team. That's where like the Eagles, if you
Okay. Yeah.
like it,
That's,
or
that's where it
the
is. Yeah. Okay.
whoever.
That's what it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
my bad. Okay, so then level three is a close friendship. This is a great way to describe this is a close friendship is you have fellowship.
Hmm.
Okay, and what is fellowship? It means fellows, two people on the same ship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what ship is that? That ship is going somewhere.
Same values.
Yeah. So you have, you're vested with one another. You're committed to your friend's success. You have similar goals and similar values. So if I'm on a ship and I'm like, we're on this ship together and we're like, hey, on this ship, we're actually going to go to Catalina Islands. But then you're like, well, I wasn't trying to go to Catalina Islands. I'm trying to go to Scotland. You know, it's totally different, right? So you're like, we're not on the same ship,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So you're not really close friends because you aren't two fellows on the same ship.
Yeah.
Now, level after that is intimate friendship. Okay, I think we can discuss this deeply in another
Of
podcast, but the
course.
reason I bring this up is because it helps me understand acquaintances are one thing, the level of conversations are one thing.
Yeah.
What's the next one? Casual friendships is another is another level, but close friendship, that's something else. Like you know all my close friends,
Mm-hmm.
every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know the conversations that I have with my close friends. In fact, I could have a close friendship conversation with this guy, and you'll always know that conversation. Unless it's something private that they
Yeah.
told me, like, hey, don't share this with anyone,
And
including,
if
you know,
they're
Gabby.
guys,
Because,
I don't care. I mean,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
But if it's like, if I have a close friendship with someone and I had a conversation with that person, if I keep that to myself and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, but I'm not going to tell my wife because this is just something that her and I have.
Mm-hmm.
Even just saying that is like, well, that's wrong.
Or like, don't tell anybody.
Yeah, this is just
Yeah.
between us.
Yeah. And I also think because we work with marriages and we work with different people, just a boundary that we just placed, was very like I deal with the women and you deal with the men.
Mhm.
If, if you happen to be like, hey, Gabby, you want to come in this conversation and offer your perspective, you'll ask me
Mhm.
and we'll sit together. But
Yeah.
it's never me, you know what? So and so from the opposite sex, I feel like I have this advice for you. Let's sit down and talk.
Or it's like I'm not gonna have a woman come up to and be like, you know what, I gotta share with you my struggles that I'm having with my husband,
Hmm.
but just you. I just want to speak to you. I don't want to
Yeah.
speak to Gabby.
Right.
I'd be like, well, you're not gonna speak to me because
Right.
I have to speak with my wife. Like, and
Exactly.
out like together we'll give you much better advice.
Yeah.
Anyways, the point is boundaries, and
Yeah.
so
No, well, it's not anyways. It's very important to understand that because it's good to tell people how we do it because
okay.
it's not just why,
Mhm.
we already explained the why part, like why we set boundaries,
Mhm.
but now it's like, what are those boundaries?
Mhm.
Well, we have boundaries in every single area of our lives, we're business owners,
Mhm.
we're ministers, and also at the same time, we're husband and wife, and we're father and mother.
Mhm.
So we have boundaries for every
Yeah.
single thing,
Yeah.
like for our marriage, it's, personally, we have boundaries like we already explained, the opposite sex, we have boundaries, even like on social media, there's integrity on, like, you're not gonna go watch,
Mhm.
other ladies,
Mhm.
naked stuff or half naked, even to the
Mhm.
point where you were starting the social media management company that we have,
Mhm.
and you had to.
I'll share that. So yeah, so I was just helping manage, different accounts. And when we were starting the business, I was, going onto our clients' things and I was posting for them myself. And, some, different people have different values. And so some of the people that I would manage, like some of the stuff that would come up on the FYP is like, bro, like that's a lot of temptation right there.
Yeah.
And so I had to set a boundary of like, you know what, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna pass this on to
And
someone else because this is
yeah.
this is too much. Like
Yeah.
this is like if I have to be here and like my
Yeah.
eyes have to look at
Or
that
even like
consistently.
for our personal branding, that we're helping,
Yeah.
it's helping us with podcasts and
Yeah.
everything. I
Yeah.
remember our social media person, they started following certain
Yeah.
women, and I understood her
Strategy.
strategy behind it, but I was like, have me follow them, not
Yeah.
Pablo, because some of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
photos and pictures
Yeah.
that I was like, I don't think that's very wise,
Yeah.
and again, you got to be realistic. Like,
Mhm.
no, that's too much control.
Nothing's gonna happen.
Men are visual, and you have to understand who your husband is. Like,
Mhm.
they're visual. Like, it's just what it is. That's how God created them to be. That's how they're wired. I mean, why do you think porn is so
Appealing to men.
uh, freaking what, like, million industry? I don't know what it is, but because it's visual.
Mm,
So you have to understand like who you're married to, especially that's why you need to know their needs. For a woman, it's the heart connection.
uh-huh.
So you have to understand that if you're having heart connections with the opposite sex, when you're having a bad time together, you're going to want to go, have someone affirm you and affirm you emotionally.
Mm,
So it's the same thing with you. Like if we're not having, it's a season of being busy or me being pregnant, whatever, we're not having a lot of sex. So what's going to happen? You're going to see those things and that's how it's going to fill you up.
mhm.
So we don't want that. And those are the boundaries we set.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
and also with the same thing with our business, yeah, you're professional, you have women that you have clients, obviously, but I remember a while back, there was, I don't remember, and I don't think it's prudent for you to say what the conversation was, but I remember this lady having a very like trying to have a very intimate conversation about asking you questions about our sex life.
Mm,
And I remember asking you like, what did you tell her? Like, that's crazy. And you were like, dude, I was just shocked. Like, how would she even what would even in her why would she even try to have this
mm.
conversation with
I don't
me?
even remember what you're talking about, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
And I
certain
don't even
things.
want to talk about it, what it
So I
was.
think we're talking a lot about in boundaries about like specifically regarding, the opposite sex, but boundaries also work with like your children. So like, what are some of those boundaries
In a
with our children?
marriage, well, I know um boundaries, and I know this was a very hard one because it was very hard for me to accept, was boundaries of them not coming into our bedroom whenever they wanted. Um and they have to knock,
Yeah,
and even if they're having a nightmare
yeah,
or they're having a hard time sleeping, that doesn't give them a right to just, obviously if it's an emergency, there's an earthquake,
yeah,
obviously that's different,
yeah.
but um they have to respect mommy and daddy's room
Space. Yeah,
because that's where we're
yeah,
intimate.
yeah,
So we don't want to traumatize our children.
yeah.
So and it's also a time where we connect,
Mhm,
where we have conversations and we just want uninterrupted conversations.
mhm.
So, I know that was a hard one for me because I felt like, well, that sucks. They're going to feel like, you know,
Excluded.
excluded, whatever.
Yeah, they're gonna
And
feel left out of the boundary. Yeah, that's the point.
yeah. So I know that was a boundary that I know, as a mom, in the beginning of it, I was a very hard boundary
Mhm,
for me to establish, but now I understand the health behind it,
mhm.
for them, it protects them,
Yeah,
but also, it keeps our marriage too,
yeah,
like where we can connect
yeah,
in our bedroom.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, do you have anything else that you wanted to share?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think also if you're a business owner, I remember hearing a story that I thought that was funny. But I remember someone was sharing like, yeah, the wife hired this not very attractive um
Secretary?
secretary, so her husband wouldn't fall into adultery. I think that's funny, and I don't think that's mature either. I think that you set these boundaries so that whoever is around
Is in your
you,
life, yeah,
like, you don't have to,
yeah,
hire the ugliest or like the
mhm,
non-attractive or
mhm,
that is very immature.
yeah.
I think that, that's very insecure too, but
That's what I was gonna say. That's very fear-based too. I think,
yeah.
and again, like we set these boundaries not because, like we're so scared that so many bad things are gonna happen. Like,
Mhm.
no, you set these boundaries because it's healthy,
Yeah.
because it's something that you should do.
And like for instance, we have our office girls, they're women. And one thing I know Pablo has always done is whenever they have issues or you see that they're off,
like
and you're
emotionally.
and you're concerned, yeah,
Yeah,
and you're truly concerned because you love them and you
sure.
care about
Oh,
them.
100%.
um you always come to me,
Yeah,
and you're always like, hey Gabby, I
you got to step in
think,
here.
yeah, I think, whether it's Jasenia or Shirley, whoever, like, I think they're off, and I think we gotta talk to them.
Mm,
You are always inviting me into it.
big
Like,
time.
it's never you trying to, have a one-on-one with them.
Yeah,
No one's here. Like,
yeah,
you've never done that,
yeah,
So those are boundaries as
yeah,
well,
yeah, big time.
that we've had.
Yeah, guys, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. I was gonna say that earlier. Gabby said, "What you said something about these aren't. This isn't a popular. This isn't like a sexy conversation. Like, oh, you know
Mhm.
what? I mean, look at the numbers, guys. Like, you can see them. Like, how many? How
Divorce.
many? No, no, no. I'm saying.
Oh.
Well, I'm saying, how many views is this video really gonna get?
Mm.
Like, but I'll tell you what. If you're watching this video and if you watch even through the end, like there's something in your heart.
Because
There's
that's
something in
true.
your heart
That's
that's
true.
because
Yeah.
I'm telling you, like the
People will
majority of
check
people
out.
that watches this video that is like,
They'll
you know
check out.
what,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like some people are busy, so like, oh, I'll watch it later, check out. But if you truly like, I don't want to watch this video anymore because just I don't like, there's something annoying about it.
Mhm.
Well, we already anticipate that, and we already know that you really have to love wisdom to watch through to the end and to
Mhm.
still stay engaged
I
with the
mean,
message, because this isn't something that is like, I'm even thinking like, man, how are we going to make this Instagrammable? Because, we have to reach out to the audience, but because this
yeah.
message is so like, it's so like,
It's uncomfortable
it's
because
uncomfortable.
it's, I mean, I know that this message, I mean, even in the Bible, when you read Proverbs, wisdom, yeah, like it sounds annoying, and even personally, like when I hear wisdom, at first you're like, dang, that's so annoying. Like, that's so controlling. That is so like exaggerating. That is so this, that's so. But I've understood that wisdom is there to protect you. And just like a loving father, just like a loving mother, they're right there telling you, don't do this. I know what I'm telling you. If you take that road, I know what I'm telling you. But a lot of times we're so independent and we're so, wise in our own thoughts, and we're lovers of our own opinion, like the Bible says. And then we hit walls. So at first, am I like, wow, like, no, at first I'm like, oh, like that is so annoying. Just let me
Yeah.
be, but
But it's
then
to protect you.
yeah, but then when you sit and you pause and you were like, wait a minute, like, this is wisdom, this is wisdom talking to you. This is wisdom, like the Bible says, crying out on the streets, like, hey, listen, 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 because you will enjoy a better life,
That's what it is.
and at first you're not going to like it, because again, we're pretty much, our nature, our sinful nature, it likes to be independent. They like to be their own god, their own judge. No one's allowed to tell you what to do. No one's allowed to judge you. So you get so closed off that you start to even push away people who carry wisdom. And then you start to get very critical of them, because you don't like what they have to say. But it's wisdom, so
And the Bible teaches us that, wisdom will protect us. Wisdom will, give us long life. It will, like I said, we wake up with so much peace and so much joy and so much love. And
mhm,
part of the reason a big part of the reason is because we heed to correction. We're like, what, this boundary has been off, like, let's do this, let's adjust, let's do all that. So I just think that's part of it. So we
yeah,
just bless you,
yeah.
wherever you're at in your journey,
Mhm.
whether you're just starting to set these boundaries or whether you're like, what, this is a good reminder and I want to, to set more boundaries, whatever it is, just know that we're all on this journey together.
Yeah.
And we're learning constantly. We're constantly allowing the Lord to,
Renew
teach
us.
us and
Yeah.
renew us and help us. But just know that this is part of the really good life. We can't have the really good life outside of this.
Yeah.
And because wisdom
Outside of
is,
wisdom.
yeah, wisdom is Jesus, and so we love you guys. We bless you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode.